warm welcome once again. It's a lovely treat to share this Science of Mind forum with you again and with a wonderful group of panellists. And please let me welcome your translator as well, Nyawang Sunam. And let me introduce our guests today. I hope you've had a lovely trip here in Australia so far. This is your chance to meet scientists rather than footballers and politicians. I know one of your favourite things is to talk with scientists, and I want to introduce our guests and then I'll explain a little bit about the format. And just to introduce myself, my name is Natasha Mitchell and I'm a science broadcaster, so science is my passion as well. On your left is Marco, just to your immediate left is Marco Iacoboni. He is Professor of Psychiatry and Biobehavioral Sciences at the University of California in Los Angeles.
Oh.
So he joins us from afar. He also directs the Transcranial Magnetic Stimulation Lab in the Brain Mapping Centre there. Marco is Italian. He's from Rome originally. And it was a team of Italian colleagues, close colleagues of Marco's, who first discovered what are called mirror neurons in the brain. And these are what Professor Iacoboni studies as well. These are surprising brain cells which are said to be linked to our ability to learn from other people, to empathise with other people, to imitate other people and to read their emotions. And Marco has written a book called Mirroring People, The New Science of How We Connect with Others, and he will present to us in a little while. We also have Patrick McGorry on our far left here. Pat is a true superstar in Australia. He's also a psychiatrist and Professor of Youth Mental Health at Melbourne University. He's the founder and director of what's called the Centre for Origin Youth Health. And his team, Your Holiness, work specifically with young people who experience mental illness in their teen years, and particularly psychosis and schizophrenia. And their model, which is now adopted worldwide, is really focused on getting in early, working with young people early to prevent mental disorders later on and mental illness. And for this, Pat was awarded Australian of the Year last year, so he became the most famous Australian last year. We can't see him yet, but over in San Francisco, one of your great friends is listening to our conversation, and he will present to us for about half an hour today. Paul Ekman,
Yes.
your dear friend who you've shared many hours of dialogue with for your book together, Emotional Awareness, and for the benefit of the audience, and a reminder to you, but you don't need reminding, and Paul Ekman's work, of course, over many years has redefined our understanding of human emotions and how we read human emotions in people's faces. You know that well. And here you also have your good friend, Dr. Alan Wallace, who's joined you on many of your travels around the world. Alan will not be presenting today, but he will be part of the conversation with us throughout. And Alan, of course, is a leading Buddhist scholar, and we're delighted to have your expertise with us today and your friendship. So what we're going to do is you and I are going to have a little chat for about half an hour, and then each of our guests will speak to you and present their work and ideas to you. So that's the plan, and then we'll open it out for conversation together. And I wanted to start with something that's always intrigued me as you take your shoes off. And that is, you've often said that mental poisons or mental afflictions obscure our natural awareness. And I'm interested... And I'm interested in what you see to be our natural awareness, what that essence is in ourselves.
Okay. I don't know exact meaning of English word mind or consciousness. In Tibetan word, shepa. Shepa, the very meaning of that is knowing. So, there is wrong views, right views. Here is a wrong and a wrong view, a right view does not mean something positive and negative, but simply the knowing the reality. That's I mean, right way. And then there are minds which see, which aware wrong way. But both, there is this sort of element of knowing. So that knowing, no need effort. So long it's mind, consciousness, the capacity or the ability, knowing there.
It's a natural awareness, and it's interesting to me that negative thoughts, though, seem to occupy our awareness in potent ways. They're sticky, aren't they? Negative thoughts seem to be stickier than positive thoughts sometimes in our awareness. We all know people who, for example, have spent many years meditating or working on past trauma, and yet they still don't find peace. They still resort to anger. And I wonder whether negative thoughts have a different essential property than positive thoughts, whether they're stickier in our consciousness in a way.
I think when you use the word negative and positive, I think you are referring some consciousness which something benefit to us, that's considered positive, isn't it? Right. So that's, I think, another level. Firstly, I think when we study about mind, I think like you said, a study of science, no sort of connection, something positive and negative. So then, I think another level, obviously, the pains and pleasure is part of mind. Through physical sort of genes or physical sort of matter, you see pains and these things happen, but the actual sort of feeling is mind. Sorwa the mind. Sorwa the yongya like that gain damage yongurvata. Actually, you see the pleasure and pain is a feeling, experience. Among the causes of that, yes, physical there. Some cases can be sort of objective.
Objective.
From the side of the object.
Objective.
Objective factor.
And then tabujen.
Possessive factor.
So there are physical element there, but the real sort of the experience is mind. So now those sort of experience which bring pleasure, peace, and other hand, those sort of mind which ultimately bring uncomfortable. So now basically, at least from the Buddhist psychology viewpoint, whether right or wrong, you have to judge. But from the Buddhist viewpoint, I think basically most of the emotion which disturb our mind is based or related with sort of wrong perception, or firstly wrong perception. That because it related ignorance. So I think here, I think a simple way to explain is, there is always a gap, appearance and reality. So most of the sort of emotion which increase disturbances, these emotion, most cases spontaneous emotion, and not, so these emotion based on appearances. So there is gap, appearance and reality. And then on the level of appearances, there are also, you see, most of these destructive emotion, you see, need some kind of the independent, absolute target or object. Now, for example, anger, I think everybody have experience.
Including yourself, perhaps.
Oh yes, certainly, certainly. I'm a human being. I'm a normal
I'm so
human
grateful
being.
for that. Yeah.
Otherwise, I may remain in space, like an angel. So in any way, when, according to our own experience, when anger develops, it need the target, something absolute independent. So when that target a little bit shaky, then the intensity of anger also a little bit sort of reduce. That's very clear. So actually, the reality, not that way. Reality, even the worst enemy, troublemaker, that happened due to many other factors, not absolute or independent. So the destructive emotions, such as anger, some independent target. Then whether that sort of target truly independent or absolute, if we investigate, then answer, then we will find no. So the grasping feeling, independent, absolute, is ignorance.
I wrestle.
So without that, you see, negative, destructive emotion, you see, cannot maintain. That's clear.
I wrestle with the idea of destructive emotions because I'm interested in your perspective on whether sadness has a place in a happy life. Here we are at a happiness conference, and it might be strange for me to talk about sadness, but it seems to me that sadness invests us with a wisdom and insight that is crucial to our happiness.
No?
Do you think there's a role for sadness in a happy and wise life?
I think sadness with sort of valid reason, that's good. That may bring enthusiasm to overcome that causes, that thing which causing sadness. Then sadness, if the sadness is bring that kind of enthusiasm, determination, then that sadness is good. But sadness just overwhelm on your mind, like that, that's bad. So the mind is such, see, there are so many sort of, interrelated sort of mind, emotion. So we cannot say, just pick up
No.
one mind is bad or good. We cannot say. We must judge all the other sort of factors which are related with that. Like anger, everybody, you see, have the experience. But anger, sometimes positive, sometimes negative.
When do you see it as being a positive experience for yourself?
Oh, now, for example, you really have sincere concern of others' well-being, then that being going wrong direction. And out of genuine sense of concern of that person, and then the circumstances, there is no other alternative. Explanation won't work. That person is a little bit stubborn. And then sometimes you may need a little sort of harsh word. Or even sometimes you need some kind of physical sort of harsh sort of action. In order to carry that short moment, you need some kind of
Ferocity.
Forceful
Ferocity.
action.
Ferocity.
Necessity in order to carry the harsh word, harsh sort of physical action. So that kind of anger is positive because motivated by compassion. So there are many sort of, many variety. And fear, positive, negative. Desire, positive, negative. And egoistic sort of attitude, also positive, negative. That's from Buddhist viewpoint. You have to judge.
I will.
Modern scientist.
Putting a lot of pressure on these scientists. And speaking of...
I think we too,
yeah.
and because me too also,
yeah.
I think we are Buddhist. So our presentation could be some, biased. So you should judge.
Speaking of compassion, and today's discussion will very much focus on compassion and the science of compassion to an extent. I know that when you fled Tibet in 1959, you left all your material possessions behind you, but you say that you carried with you what you describe as the most priceless possession of all, and that was infinite compassion. And I guess I think of what does that look like? What does that feel like inside? Because when I think about infinite compassion, I'm exhausted.
그래, 당시하지.
The exhaustion tangible. Bena moran ning samla tang baina tangible ring
Oh. Of course, I always telling people, firstly, I got the experience of compassion or affection was from my mother. It's a really wonderful, affectionate mother, uneducated, farmer, illiterate, but really wonderful sort of warm-heartedness. So all her children and sort of her friends, I think, receive maximum sort of affection from her. That is seed of my compassion. And then, of course, later, I study Buddhism and practice the poorly, practice poorly. But I try my best. Then really, mainly, you see, practice two things. Analyze the reality and Buddhist sort of concept, particularly Buddhist concept, selflessness. That, since my young age, say 15, 16-year-old, I have some sort of interest about that. Then altruism. At that time, I find it difficult to infinite altruism. At that time, difficult to because of the practice. But I have sort of genuine admiration about that infinite altruism.
Infinite altruism.
Infinite altruism. So, it's the quality which you gain in mental level, that wherever you go, always with you. And then physical sort of quality, when you are getting old, sometimes you have to retire. Those sports, because it's physical, you see there's limitation. But mental quality, no limitation.
So you're not going to retire from infinite compassion anytime soon?
No.
No. You talk about...
So therefore,
Yes.
you see, the altruism or compassion really acts inner sort of strength, self-confidence. Anger, hatred brings fear, more fear. Because anger develop as the attitude you yourself distance from other. So then distrust, suspicion, that brings more fear. And deep inside, some kind of lonely feeling. The altruistic attitude bring together. So through that way, no basis of fear. Immense helpful.
I wonder whether many of us deny the capacity for compassion in ourselves when we walk past someone who is homeless on the streets here in Australia, here in Brisbane or Melbourne or Sydney. Are we censoring our capacity for compassion? And you also speak of the need for an authentic compassion. And I'm interested in how you view that, what that looks like, as distinct from a false compassion.
I think firstly, children, very young age, I think basic humans of nature, I think more alive. They do not care their social background, or I think children may not much calculate if I treat them what I will get. I think children simply play together, and so long they play together, they feel sort of genuine companionship, like that. Then, and also I think at that level, I think they very much appreciate the other sort of affection. Then when we grown up, myself also now, more white hair, and all three.
All of us. All of us.
Me too.
You, I think.
It's all under colour.
Oh, I see. So, suppose you see we gain more experience and we become more wiser, but then sometimes we a little bit sort of neglect about these basic human values. We too much pay attention about our intelligence, and then more ambition. So, I think we really need pay more attention. While our sort of education, knowledge, experience increase, the basic human values must catch up with that. That's my fundamental belief. So in order to develop these sort of fundamental sort of our value, if we rely on religion, very limited, and firstly cannot be universal. So I usually used to call the secular way to promote these things. Not through prayer, not through meditation, but through awareness and through education.
So through the
So
engagement of the intellect.
That we can do. So you see, generally people, as they not adequate information about the value of this warm-heartedness. So we not pay attention about that. We consider that's a religious matter. So that's I feel mistake. Basically, we all have sort of same sort of potential, everybody. But then we need sort of nurture these things. Otherwise, you see, the intelligence side, brain side, rapidly develop, increasing. But then warm-heartedness side remain dormant like that. That I feel we have to think seriously about that. How lift up using that basic sort of human good quality without touching religion.
Your Holiness, I know that you are
So
great.
now here I think when I find the opportunity, then I have to use maximum way.
He just hit me.
Sorry.
It was an act of love.
So I would like to share. When we talk about affection or compassion, there are two levels. One level, mainly, a biological factor. That's limited, biased, oriented about others' behavior. So that kind of compassion, you see, cannot reach towards our enemy or neutral people. And particularly enemy, difficult, because that biological factor of compassion oriented others' attitude. So your enemy's attitude is negative to you. So there is sufficient reason. I must hate, I must anger, because they harms me. Now that compassion as a seed, compassion as I mentioned earlier, but that take as a seed, then use human intelligence, then reasoning, that kind of warm-heartedness, extremely useful for my own health, for my peace of mind, for my own sort of community or for my own sort of family, my own community. And then if you have some experience, then you can see many problems which we are facing today. Ultimately, too much self-centered attitude, lack of altruistic sort of attitude. So knowing these things, these reasons, then you develop furthermore, you see, that compassion. Now that level of compassion through training, not oriented others' attitude, but the human being themselves. So now in that level, your enemy, also human being, also part of we. They also need happiness.
We are interdependent.
We are interdependent. Therefore, with reasoning, through training, our limited compassion then can reach the second level of compassion, then can easily extend towards our enemy.
Easier said than done. Easier said than done, I think. Easier to say than to do, perhaps, for some people. We're about to come to
some people, yes.
Yes.
But not all.
One question I have. No, that's right. Your Holiness, we're about to come to Paul Ekman, but just before we do, I know that you are a great advocate for secular ethics and education, but you've also said that genuine happiness, so not fleeting pleasures, but genuine happiness is spiritual in nature. So while we can do away with religion, perhaps, these are your words, we still need to hang on to the spiritual.
Yes.
And in a Western setting, many people find it hard to define the spiritual. It might be an essentially personal feeling that they can't give words to. But why do you see pure happiness, essential happiness, genuine happiness as being essentially spiritual in nature?
Happiness itself, sort of mental feeling. So I believe, usually I describe the value, the very meaning of value is something. Now here value is matters or minds or mental experience or external matters which brings more comfortable, more happiness, perhaps long-lasting happiness. Now that I consider valuable thing. So ultimately, calm mind, mental state satisfaction, that's the, and that itself, and then those sort of causes of that I consider spirituality.
And this is the point.
Because, you see, dealing with the mind, mental experience.
Does that have to be
So
spiritual?
the people, billionaire, but cannot buy spirituality. Only develop through their own sort of mental training. So that we call spirituality. And then also I think animal, I think we can't say. Because you see, that kind of spirituality, as I mentioned earlier, through training. So use reason. So animal world, some cases, I think limited sort of ability, reasoning, but not that much as human
Can we
being.
call it intellectual rather than spiritual?
Intellectual itself, you see, the intellectual sometimes you see bring a lot of disaster. Isn't it?
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
these troublemaker, some of these people, I think the September 11th event, I think those sort of planning, the main people, I think their brains are very smart.
Yeah, that's right.
They know a lot of information,
Yeah.
and they calculate, and also the way prepare that attack step by step. So foolish people cannot do that. Very smart, intelligent.
But no heart.
Yes, no heart.